Mr. Chris Spiro is on the line. He's the chairman of the New Hampshire Democratic Party. He's spoken of his boyhood in Greece and compared it to what's going on with the Kurds in Iraq tonight and today. 391-2800. OJ, you're on the line.
Barry?
Yes.
Nice talking to you. One thing I like to say right off, I am not one of these Americans who is totally confused and demoralized by what's going on in the Middle East. As a matter of fact, I'm one of the many Americans who was very proud of what our president and our Congress, who has supported him, and everyone else who supported him and the troops in the Middle East have done. And all this is number one, on the part of Mr. Spiro, taking advantage of an opportunity to make political hay for the Democratic Party, which needs all the help they can possibly get. And number two, nothing more than simply Monday morning quarterbacking. There was no one at the time of the ceasefire who even suggested or had any hint of what was going to happen as a result of us living up to our agreement of the UN resolution to simply go to the border of Iraq and no further. And one more comment with Mr. Schwarzenkoff in his interview with David Frost. He did not say we made a mistake and that he wanted to go. What he said was he was suckered. He was suckered by Mr. Hussein to allow him to use the helicopters in order as a humanitarian effort. That was what he had said, and not that we should have gone, because he knew darn well that it was from the beginning until the end, strictly up to the border of Iraq.
Did he not say that we should, in his view, we should have continued a couple of more days?
No, he did not say that, because he took life very seriously. That's what he did say. A couple more days would have meant the loss of a possible another 20 to 100 men, is what he had said, and he takes every single
Well,
life.
I don't have the script in front of me, but you and I watch different programs, but I thank you. Mr. Spiro, you want to comment?
Well, what can one say to that kind of commentary? If the person is proud of 2 million refugees, if the person is proud of the only thing that we can say is that we restored a prince in Kuwait, and he's secure and safe in his palace and is taking hot baths tonight. If that's what the kind of thing that we were there to do, the way I understood it is that we had a new Hitler in this world by the name of Saddam Hussein. And tonight, Saddam Hussein is sitting in his palace in Baghdad, and millions of people are dying on the mountains and on the hillsides of Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. And he can go to sleep tonight feeling very proud, all he wants to.
Jim, you're on the line.
Yeah, hi, Barry.
Hi, Jim.
What Mr. Spiro said about the Greeks during the Civil War struck a chord in me, because my parents came also from the mountains around Thessaly. And Yasu Kyrios Spiro ke Christos Anesti.
Alithos Anesti.
Could you explain...
Parakalo, I'm delighted for you two guys. Get with it, will you?
Yeah, okay, just a little sidebar there.
Yeah, but I don't know what you could have said. Listen,
no,
the raid starts at 2.
Well, you know, we're still celebrating our Easter, so...
Well, he really wanted... What happened, Barry, is when two Greeks get together, they open up a restaurant. He made a proposal. He had to do it in Greek. So you wouldn't get the commission.
Okay, all right.
I wanted Mr. Spiro to explain the politics of George Bush's, and I agree with Mr. Spiro, incidentally, that it's not only too little, it's much, much too late, and George Bush has the blood of those Kurds on his hands. He could have done something 3 weeks ago, Barry, the way you said it. What is the politics? Why did he wait so long? Because it's all politics, I think.
Well, let me tell you what my personal view is of our policymakers are, and it goes back a little while, even back to Jimmy Carter's administration. One of our problems is that we haven't read the history of that area of the world to understand the psyche and the behavior of the people and what happens there. Way back in our history, you'll see that hundreds upon hundreds of leaders met their Waterloo in the Middle East. And if you look back at Alexander the Great's great march into that area of the world, his problems began when he reached that particular point, Persia. His people, his generals, and his people started complaining and wondering what they were doing there because of the of the politics and the way they performed over there. And that's where his trouble started. And since then, they haven't stopped. Nobody has gone into that particular area and came out a winner. And so we send bravado generals, or we send bravado politicians, or we send people like Colonel North with Bibles over there without reading the history and understanding how they behave. And that's what I think is the basic problem here. George Bush went in there believing that we have a fair fight with somebody who is with a mentality that says, I fought you just that we do here in America. I defeated you, shake hands, you go back to where you belong, and I go back to where I belong. That's not the way they fight over there. The problem is that he identified the culprit correctly at the beginning. It was Saddam Hussein. That's the problem. And the solution that we have today did not address the problem. And so Barry's assessment that Saddam Hussein is what we had to address, not going in 20 miles into Iraq so we can get 1 million refugees running over so we can hug them for a month and a half and then leave them there so he can go back with the secret police and massacre them. What do you think is going to happen to those poor Iraqi deserters when our soldiers leave that area? What do you think is going to happen in the darkness of the night over there 2 months from now? They're going to be buried in the sand, and it's a sad commentary. And the problem is, again, that we go with an American mentality that says we'll have a fight, we'll shake hands, and we'll go back to our respective corners. That's not the way it happens over there, and we're paying today, and I predicted this on this particular show a month and a half ago, that we are facing the same problem because the same person is going to be calling the shots over there, and he's doing it today. His name is Saddam Hussein.
Thank you.
Margaret, you're on the line. Margaret? Yes.
Yes, Mr. Spiros.
Yes, Margaret.
I was enthralled by you the first time I heard you a month ago, and I'm also now.
I thank you so much.
Oh, my God, you're in a story. Mr. Spiros, I don't want to tell you how to do anything, but on the
Could you calm down a little bit, please?
I get so excited when I hear you, Barry.
You're getting my cats very nervous.
My little dog is asleep. Hold on.
Okay.
Mr. Spiros, on the Democratic agenda, the most important thing that I'm actually my tongue is hanging out for is national health care for this country. This is a country that...
Ma'am, that's not what we're talking about tonight. We'll do it another night. In the meantime, take care. Madeline, you're on the line. Go ahead.
Hello, yes. I only tuned in late, but I get the gist of the conversation. I do agree with this gentleman that says that we have the mentality that we fought the war, now I won, you lost, we shake hands, we go home. At one time, the world was like that. You could do that.
Well,
but I do agree that this man is like a new Hitler, and you cannot have that kind of camaraderie or whatever, that kind of mentality with a man like a madman like this.
He's more than a Hitler. He's got the three heads of a snake.
Right. I agree that we should have proud of what our boys did. I back President Bush in going in and fighting, but I do believe they should have done something, if I may say, do away with this madman.
No.
Not leave him there to persecute his people, but since it has been done this way, I don't feel that it is America's job to feed the world either.
Well, what does that mean?
Well, I think he should have done away with Saddam Hussein. But now that we have all these hungry people, it's not America's job to feed the whole wide world.
Well, it's Wednesday morning, 12:25 in New York. What do we do now?
That's life in this world of war.
But
that's what happened to our men that dropped out of the helicopter.
Ma'am, but what do we do now?
What do we do now?
I seem to recall that question.
We'll either go after this man again, but we cannot.
What do we do now? I'm asking, and so is Mr. Spiro. What do you think we ought to do now? You're a voter. What do you think we ought to do?
Is that acceptable in the eyes of humanity to go after this man again? That's what I'd like to know. Could we go after this man again?
In this great city of New York, where Mort Saul says everyone is Jewish, and I believe it, you're now doing the old Jewish tradition of answering a question with a question. I asked you first. What do we do now?
Well, doing away with Saddam Hussein now is not going to feed all these people.
Barry, can I say something?
You ain't going to give in, are you? What do we do now, ma'am?
You want me to say feed all these people?
No, I don't want you to say anything. I want you to answer me directly. What do you think we ought to do now? Do we march out? Do we cease humanitarian efforts? What?
I just don't think it's our job to feed all
Thank
these
you
people.
very much. It's impossible. Mr. Spiro?
Well, Barry, you
She's
see
your
what happens
witness.
you see what happens is this. We like to call ourselves the great moral upholders of this world, but when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, we have no answers. In other words, she would be happy if we chased a person who committed war crimes in 1940, if we put that person on trial, and if we even that person sentenced him to death. She would be satisfied with that scenario. But we got 2 million people being persecuted by this man right now, and hundreds of thousands have already been killed by him, and she doesn't have an answer.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's not our responsibility. Who's Why was it our responsibility to go into Kuwait?
Mr. Spiro, earlier on we talked glowingly of the late Harry Truman. The fact is that under your scenario, where we came out of our corners and we fought a war, the fact is that we did indeed restore Japan and restore Germany and restore Italy, and we took care of those tens of thousands of people who were starving.
Exactly. Barry, more power to you. That's exactly what we ought to be doing. If I were the President of the United States, you know what I would do? With the support that he has had from the world, I would give that bomb over there 24 hours. 24 hours. Take your family and your belongings and go find a friend, whether it's Gaddafi or Idi Amin, so you can live together, leave Baghdad or else, and you'll see what happens.
Okay. In a moment, we're going to have the news on WOR, and then we're going to continue with Mr. Chris Spiro. Mr. Spiro is the chairman of the New Hampshire Democratic Party, and we're trying to find out what do we do next in Iraq, in Iran, in Turkey, on WOR. Hard-to-reach mountain areas. And the president conceded today that American efforts to date have not worked. They've proven inadequate. We've dropped supplies and, unfortunately, not made much of a dent in the terrible problem of that nearly 2 million people. My phone number, 391-2800, and Gladys, you're on the line.
Yes, I don't think we should have a parade. Right now, we don't know how many of our boys are going to die over there. They should leave that parade when all the boys come home. And, you know, this Hussein, why don't they tell him to come over here? We seem to be collecting all the garbage from other countries.
Mr. Spiro, you want to say anything?
Well, I think the issue here is the misdirection that we've been given in the last few days in particular. 2 days ago, the president was shouting in Florida that we're not going to get involved in the civil war that has been raging in that part of the world and in that country in particular for generations, he said. We're not going to get one American soldier in there, and that's it, and I'm not going to have anything to do with it. He shouted yesterday on television. I watched them shouting in Florida to the cadets. Today, he says that we're going to send American soldiers to create camps. Does anybody understand what that means? They're going to bring 1,700,000 people into certain concentration areas, not concentration camps, but concentrated areas, which means they need to be taken care of. It's like creating a city or several cities of 100,000 people. It means they need sanitation. It means they need water, food, medicine, place to sleep. And then what happens? How long do you stay? What happens if you leave? Will the Kurds come down from the mountains if they're not completely guaranteed that they're going to be protected? Because once you put them in a level playing field and Saddam Hussein shows up with his helicopters once again or his gas bombs, these people are petrified. You're not going to convince them to come down from the mountain unless there's a policy. And this policy, which is flip-flop from one day to the other, gives absolutely no incentive to anybody in the world to believe that we're serious in understanding the magnitude of the problem. I mean, when you send the Secretary of State over there, Barry, for 12 minutes. 12 minutes. He spends 2.5 hours talking to one of our biggest enemies in the Middle East, the president of Syria. And he spends 12 minutes exactly talking to the refugees, to 1.7 million refugees who are refugees in their own home by their own dictator. There's got to be something screwy here.
Mr. Spiro, I love what you're saying, but we have a switchboard that looks like a Christmas tree. And I'd appreciate it if you...
I'll be short, okay?
Okay. Michael, you're on the line.
Yes, Barry. Mr. Spiro speaks very eloquently. Number one, he mentioned that George Bush's name was mentioned on Nightline tonight. It was not mentioned. No names. There was one name mentioned pertaining to the sale of these shipments to Iraq.
I think that's kind of a quibble. Who cares?
Well, the idea is, why should he say a thing like that?
Okay, thank you.
His name
Ann, you're next. Go ahead. Ann?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. I agree with what Mr. Spiros is saying. I think that we're still living in an age of genocide, and what's happening to the Kurds is just a terrible, terrible tragedy. What I find very disturbing is that such a fuss is raised about the Palestinians and Palestinian rights. Why isn't anyone making a fuss about the Kurds? I don't see any demonstrations. I don't see...
Well, there have been demonstrations at the UN. Of course there have.
But very minor, and they're usually
Yeah, but a moment ago you told me there weren't any. There are, and a lot of the people in the world are very upset about what's happening in the Kurds, has witnessed this discussion tonight, has witnessed Nightline, and I'm sure many hundreds of people are discussing it, if not thousands.
Well, they are discussing it. However, it's not getting the kind of publicity and attention that other problems are
What
getting.
the hell do you think we're doing?
1 minute.
What do you think we're doing?
We're doing it.
Charlie, you're next. Charlie, you're next. Go ahead.
Mr. Gray?
Yeah.
And I'm addressing this to Mr. Spiro and the Democratic Party. They mentioned back when the President Bush was trying to rally everybody in Congress to support going in and liberating Kuwait, that one of the major items they mentioned was the 40,000 body bags. Now, what didn't happen was we didn't get the 40,000 body bags.
Thank God.
And thank God is right. And this is a civil war that's going on in that country. We all empathize with the Kurds, and I'm sure that something should be done through the United Nations. But why should the United States alone go in and do something and jeopardize the lives of our boys again?
Mr. Spiro?
Well, precisely, the president made a decision, and he said the freedom of the world is at stake. Aggression should not be tolerated, and that's the reason that he deployed 600,000 of our young people over there. They didn't go over there to get suntan, so they went there for a purpose. And the purpose was the purpose of our visit to that area was to do away with the problem, and the problem was Saddam Hussein. Today we have the same problem in existence. The president said that Saddam Hussein afflicted pain and suffering to his own people, and he invaded a friendly country and is occupying it. He needs to be addressed, and we must...
Barry, I'm hanging up. The man isn't even answering my question.
Okay, thank you for hanging up, sir. Sam, you're on the line.
Mr. Spiro.
Yes, Sam.
Kuwaitis should be asked to open up the doors and bring in the Kurds. They lost their country, and we got it back for them. Let's help out the Kurds in safe territory. We're feeding the Kuwaitis. Let's feed the Kurds the right way and keep them under cover.
Well, that's precisely what I've been saying. Watching on one channel, the Emir of Kuwait, making another $10 million chandelier for his palace, and watching watching the friends up there on the mountains and having pictures of those little children dying, it just pains me to no end.
In other words, we made a boo-boo with Kuwaiti then.
Okay.
We made a bad boo-boo.
You made your point, sir. I love the baby talk. And you're next. 391-2800. Go ahead.
Mr. Spiro?
Yes?
Yeah, I agree with you thoroughly that the Saddam Hussein has to go. I called the White House twice last week, and I must tell you, the Kurds, as you know, have been there for over 2,000 years. They're in their own land. Kirkuk is the capital. as their capital. When oil was discovered, they were removed thousands of miles away from the area, nothing from the UN, and they are in their lands. The newcomers are the Arabs. We have to undo what was done in 1922, when we gave the Arabs, the Hashemites, two Hashemite brothers, complete control from Jordan all the way across that top peninsula. And the Arabs
Listen, while we're at it, do you think we can get the British out of the north of Ireland? Because they moved in 1916.
Well, I know, but Barry, that's where the trouble started.
I know.
And I'm so grateful that you have this. This has disturbed me on tonight. But the Kurds are in their own land. They're being occupied by it. You see, they've decided that the Arabs are the rulers. They are a minority. And I know a little bit about the history when they came out of after the death.
I got your point, ma'am.
Okay, and the Kurds belong where they are, and they have to have their own land, and they're not going to be a minority in an Iraq, which is an artificial country, as Jordan is.
Okay, thank you. 391-2800. We'll be back with your phone calls immediately after this.
Barrows.
How are you?
Barry, a few callers earlier, you had a woman, you kept asking her what you thought we should do, and she wouldn't answer you. I think, how about getting the rest of the Kurds, letting them stay up in the mountains for the time being? Then let Saddam Hussein know and the Iraqis know that they have 72 hours to whoever in Iraq wants to get out and join the Kurds in the mountains, go back and finish the job what we should have done in the first place and get rid of this maniac. And then after we liberate Iraq from Hussein, let the Kurds move back into their own country.
Mr. Spiro?
I agree that 72 hours is too much. Look at this guy has done some things that should be unforgivable and unforgettable. First, he gasses his own people. Then he invades Kuwait. Then he sets fire to destroy the environment of the Middle East. Then he lets the flow of oil to destroy any life on the ocean in that area. Then he throws Scud missiles at Israel, not being involved at all in the conflict.
Well, maybe
we forgive him for all of those things. Now he gives us 1.7 million refugees, and we still wonder what the problem is. There's got to be something wrong in our mentality. It's got to be.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Barry.
Dan, you're on the line.
Yes. Hello, Mrs. Barrows.
Yes, sir.
By the way, I do want to start off by saying I certainly understand your feeling, and I feel the same way about what has happened to the Kurds. But I think that by making it a partisan issue, you've taken your eye off the ball. In other words, it was very plain that when this whole idea of fighting a war came about, the Democratic Party, by and large, wanted sanctions. Then
I supported the president. I praised the troops. I praised the president for his behavior there. And it's not a partisan issue. I'm an American. I have the right to say that when the president 2 days ago said, we are not going to get involved in a civil war, no way am I going to allow that to happen, and 24 hours later, he does a complete 180-degree turn. I am telling you there's something wrong, and it's not partisan.
Well, we're not involved.
Instability.
Well, let me ask you this. We're not involved in the civil war. What we're trying to do is take care of the Kurds, which we should do. And I 100% agree that we should take care of them. But to go back and say that now, because the President Bush did go to war and did do everything that the Democratic Party didn't want to do, and we followed what the United Nations wanted us to do, rather than
wait a second. The Democratic Party supported the deployment. The Democratic Party disagreed only as to the timing of us taking action. That's the only thing the Democratic Party and several members, Steve Solars and many others in the party, supported the president down the line. So don't give us a blanket. Blanket opposition to the war.
Mr.
The
Spiro,
issue is this.
I've talked to Congressman Solars and to Ackerman and so many other members of the Democratic Party who were supporting the president right from the first moment.
So don't give me this blanket indictment. It's as though anyone opposed it. There was a difference of opinion as to when we should use military force. The thing is now, as we're watching tonight on Nightline, at the same time that we were getting ready to bomb Baghdad, the White House was allowing Iraq to receive shipments of military equipment through Jordan.
Okay. Next call, and that is Sally.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'd like to say that I don't believe that we should have a parade here in New York either. I think there's just too much unrest, and I really don't think that this conflict is settled at all. I'd like to ask a couple of questions, and then I'll hang up and take my answer off the air.
Please.
Do you know, are our troops the only one over there, or are the rest of the United Nations troops that we're supporting? Are any of their soldiers still over there?
Mr. Spiro?
My understanding is that there's some Arab League for some of our allies from the Arab world are still there. Most of the others of the West have withdrawn, and the president's proposal tonight, as I understand it, is that French, American, and British MPs and other supportive military staff be sent to northern Iraq to supervise the creation of places for people to gather.
Okay. Ma'am?
Have a parade with this still going on. And my next question is, are you there?
Yes.
We complain about Mr. Bush, President Bush not going on to Baghdad, but did he really have a choice in this with the coalition? You know, he had to deal with the coalition.
Madam, let me just remind you of some historical fact. Once upon a time, a general by the name of MacArthur faced a president named Truman. They went to Manila together to have a meeting. General MacArthur refused the orders of the president to land before him and to greet the president as commander-in-chief. When he refused the second time, the president told the person who conveyed the message, "You tell General MacArthur to land before me, or you bring him down any way that he can get down here. Shoot him if you have to." So the president of the United States by the name of Truman was big enough to tell his big general that you have to face the consequences for your actions.
He also...
Now we have a president for a year now almost, have been telling us that the biggest nemesis the world has today is a guy by the name of Saddam Hussein. And is it too much for the American people and for the world to wonder why that person tonight is sleeping in his palace, giving direction to his troops to kill his people, while 1.7 million Kurds are dying?
Okay. Next call, and that's Frank.
Yeah, I'd like to say, first of all, to Mr. Spiros, I remember when he was on your show a few months back, and Mr. Spiros at that time was saying that we should have gave the sanctions a little more time. Now tonight he's saying, oh, he was with the president. And
that's
secondly,
not what I said. Listen, don't say what I said. I said then, as Barry asked me on more than one occasion, and I have the tape if you want it, I said that I supported the president, and I said it publicly here.
Yes, you did, but you did also, I remember, I specifically, you did say that you wished that we would have
members of my party disagreed with the president and wanted to give sanctions more time. That was the debate at the time. But as far as I was concerned, I supported the president.
Secondly, does Barry Gray like...
I don't know. He's a nice fellow. You'll see him in the counting house. Gene, you're on the line.
Barry?
Yes.
I say the parade is out of order.
Okay.
Because the mood has changed. What we should do is take that money, whatever we can give the Kurds, and just help them. We can't have a parade, all the dancing and the fireworks and everything else. It's just not going to go now.
Okay. Henry, you're on the line. Henry.
Mr. Spiro.
Yes, sir.
In essence, really, two nations could have really handled this whole problem, two people. One, the Israelis would have done a complete job, but they're out of the question at the moment. The other main person, if he would just make one announcement, Saddam Hussein would listen to him, whether to kill him or not, is General Norman Schwarzkopf. If he just got on the air and he said, listen, no more gunships, leave the Kurds alone, we're going in, believe me, we wouldn't even need any more troops, just the word of General Norman Schwarzkopf. He's proven himself. In 3 days he did such a beautiful job. All he has to do is get on the air, that's it.
Yeah,
but heaven knows, Bush is not listening. I don't know.
Well, sir, let me just tell you.
Sure.
When they were told to show up at a camp someplace in Iraq to sign, they were there. Okay, when the president said, you show up over there and you sit down with my generals and stop this thing, Saddam Hussein found both the resolve and the ways and the means to get there. If the President of the United States gave him, on behalf of the free world, gave him 24 hours to pack up and join Idi Amin in restful peace someplace in the jungle, he would comply with it if he meant it. The problem is that we're pussyfooting around, and that's why not only we're losing our resolve, we're losing the respect of the people around. And the pictures on television, take a look at them objectively. Don't look at them, with this, with a flag.